Hello, future me. I didn't actually want to do this, but the ENTP at my office showed me the one that she did about triggering people and challenged me to do one of my own. And I said, I'm not an EP, I don't do challenges. But then that of course made her argue, and in the time that it took for her to get bored of trying to goad me into it, I was already thinking about what kind of tier list I would do in the back of my mind. So of course I'm not going to show this to anyone, because she'd be insufferable if she found out that she made me do it, but also people have lost interest in what I have to show them since I brought my collection of animal skulls into school for show and tell in the 6th grade. Having said that, let's have a look. Okay, this is the list template that they've given me. I don't like it very much. It's laid out in traffic light order with red at the top, but everyone always puts their good things at the top and their bad things at the bottom, which implies that red is good and green is bad, which just isn't how traffic light systems work in visual communication. So I either need to flip the colors on the graphic or find out how to do one where red equals good. I'm gonna have to think about this. Well, it turns out I can't flip the colours, which is annoying, and I'm tempted to design a whole new website of my own just so that I can invert the colours, but one thing at a time. Said me, never. I think I'll just rank the types on how exhausting they are to be around. That should be easy enough. And I'll do it based on the people with whom I work, because I really only meet people at work. So here's the 16 personalities ranked from the least to most draining in the workplace. I've named the tiers as if my energy were a battery. I think it's quite self-explanatory. Green is at the bottom, unfortunately, with 80% battery remaining. Not 100%, obviously. Have I ever had 100% energy? You know, I could probably just say extroverts are at 0% if they're on the TEFI axis, and 20% if they're on the FETI axis. But I guess that would be reductionist, wouldn't it? Not that this whole system isn't reductionist. And come to think of it, yeah, I'd need to test that theory before I went with it, so we need to go through each type anyway. Alright, I'll do that in a second. So, ISTJ. Introvert is a plus, and they're usually pretty quiet, but their tolerance for small talk is high, or at least their tolerance for telling you small and irrelevant details about their life, but then their tolerance for team building activities is quite low. So what does that mean? Hey, could I do this as a formula? Wait a second. So I worked out a formula comparing the functions across things like small talk and loudness and so on. Then I assigned values to the rankings so that I could work out a score for each type. And of course I applied weightings for the first and second functions. Otherwise it would have come out as pretty meaningless. But you know, in the end, I'm not sure it was worth it because it still all just seems a bit arbitrary. I really should have checked if there was a standard methodology for these types of things. Hang on a second. Okay, so I watched a bunch of those tier ranking videos and, well, I'm never getting those hours back. But it seems I've been overlooking the fact that these tier things are actually supposed to have your completely unfounded opinions, and it's all just a vehicle for snarky jokes and petty point scoring, which I suppose makes sense of the weird one that the ENTP did. So I guess now I have to think of some opinions to have, and snarky jokes. Right. Hi again, future me. Today we'll be making baseless generalizations from my own experience of how draining the 16 personalities are to be at work with. I ended that sentence with a preposition, I have to do it again. Hi again, future me. Today we'll be doing... Nope. Hi again, future me. Today we'll be Hi again, future me. Hi again, future me. Today we'll be making baseless generalizations based on... Hi again, future me. Today we'll be making baseless generalizations from my own experience of how exhausting the 16 personalities are to be around at work. Starting with ISTJ. 40%. ISTJs are usually pretty quiet and often fluent in sarcasm, which is a bonus, but they can monologue about their search for the perfect toothbrush for an hour at a time, or at least what feels like an hour. But that might be just because my sense of time is non-existent. ISTP is 60%. ISTPs are famous for being silent, But I think that's because most people just haven't hit on that one niche interest that the ISTP has. When you do though, it's like unlocking their secret level. It took me 3 years to crack that the ISTP at my work has a particular interest in medieval archery. That got them going for an entire 5-minute monologue. Or was it an hour? I would know if my sense of time were existent. ESTP, easy 0, or maybe 20. Because they usually just ignore us, but that just conjures up numb flashbacks from when I was ignored by every ESTP in high school, except when they needed to cheat off me in exams. Although I did hide behind them in contact sports, so I suppose it was a fair trade. ESTJ, also 0%. The thing with ESTJs is they work really hard, which I can respect, but they have this thing that I call big TE energy, and more traumatizing high school group project flashbacks. ISFJ 60%. The only bad thing about working with an ISFJ is that their desk is always so tidy, which makes you feel bad, which means that if you're me, you end up doing this face, which means that they sense your awkwardness and then they in turn feel awkward, which means that I do even more of an awkward face. And the cycle of life continues in which I make every human being feel awkward ad infinitum. ISFPs are pretty chill, but if Dave hands me one more polished quartz and tells me that it's a crystal that can heal my energy after a 2-hour staff development meeting, at which point I'm at my most vulnerable, I might scream. Honestly, some of Dave's conversation topics make me long for the ISTJ's toothbrush. 40%. ESFPs. I mean, ESFPs are really nice, which makes me feel bad for saying 0%, but 0%. I mean, you know how they are, future me. They're a non-stop one-person party. Well, one person until they rope every other extrovert and high FE user on the floor into a conga line of horror. This is why I avoid floors. Dance floors, I mean, not floors in general. Although floors do seem to have a problem with me, given that I can't seem to consistently navigate how to stay upright on them. ESFJ. Again, ESFJs are really nice people. Awfully, dreadfully, appallingly nice. But if I hear the phrase, engage with stakeholders one more time, I might die. And why does Mark need to have a huddle before the forward planning meeting, then the meeting, then a debrief after the meeting? It just makes me want to huddle under my desk, which I do most of the time. And that's actually the only time that Floors and I do get along, 0%. INFJ, 60%. INFJs also have a secret level. Once the TI comes out, they can be super sarcastic. Well, as long as there's no one around who they think is important. And since I found her sarcastic level, Rebecca at work sometimes lets me stand beside her at team morning teas while she does the whole conversation thing. In my head, I blend in when I do that, but I think in reality I probably look something more like this. INFP. I have a lot of time, relatively I mean, for INFPs. This thing about their opinions being this terrible emotional minefield is highly exaggerated. I mean, personal or universal, a principle is a principle, right? It's not that hard to remember what they're touchy about if you just observe them quietly for a few months. Made easier since I learned how to observe people without doing awkward, unintentionally creepy face. Anyway, they're perfect procrastination partners, and we hide from meetings together, and bond over our mutual problems with the floor. 60% battery left. ENFP, I don't know, 40, 20, 0? It depends exactly on how they're feeling. Sometimes they're fairly quiet and interesting to talk to, but on the other hand, they seem to know everyone in the entire building, and every single one of those people seems to need to come by every single day for a chat. I try to be friendly, but there's only so many times I can look up from my work and smile without looking like I'm being held hostage, which ironically most of the time I feel like I am. I'll go with a generous 20%. ENFJ. Nope, 20% is the best I can do. Even the ones who don't psychoanalyze people, who am I kidding, they all do. Come on, you know you all do. Are still really into office politics and drama. And although I tend to avoid both of those things, the ENFJ just seems to still want something from me. And I have absolutely no idea what. What is it? What do you want from me? So INTJs are fairly quiet and only speak up when they have properly joined up thoughts to share. Now that should be perfect. But they also have this really weird competitive vibe. They're usually okay for INTPs because they eventually work out that we just don't care and then stop seeing us as a threat to their superiority or whatever. And then they're great. But if you find yourself in between an INTJ and an ENTP or J, which if you do, you've made some terrible life decisions, then there will be no peace. So INTJ on their own, 60%. But if there's another NT in sight, 20%. INTP. Now apparently most people find a way to put their own type at the top of the tier ranking, but a person is still a person. The INTP at work does make a really good procrastination buddy, like the INFP, and I don't have to worry about making small talk with them in the tea room, which is great, because navigating how to pour the boiling water into the teacup without losing the tea bag string is a task that needs my 100% focus. 60%. Now ENTPs generally speaking seem to find INTPs very entertaining, but it's a trap. Solid NE might seem fun for the first 20 minutes, but for an ENTP, a conversation hasn't even begun in the first 20 minutes, or at least what I assume is 20 minutes with my sense of time being non-existent. And by the time it occurs to them that they've missed 3 meetings and a fire drill, your brain will be nothing more than a stinky patch on your shoulder after it slowly melted and leaked out of your ear. You're welcome for that image, 20%. I'm not being ungenerous here, this is legitimately how much people drain me. ENTJ, big TE energy again. They're just as terrifying as ESTJs because once they figure out that you're good at something, anything, they will figure out ways of exploiting this in you. Sorry, helping you realize your potential. I don't want to realize my potential. People who have realized their potential don't have time for 30,000 different hobbies and interests and for going to the library at lunchtime, or for refining the art of pouring boiling water over tea bags. I will master it. I don't do hustle, Brenda. 0%. Oh, is that the lot? Oh, good. I'm tired now. Oh look, I didn't put anyone in 80%. Well, that's fair, I only have that much energy at home. But that wasn't much good, was it? Maybe I should do one about the secret levels of the types instead. I'll have to think about that.
Well, it's time to do that other ranking.